I guess you could say life started going crazy when I was 5. That's when my parents got a divorce, and ever since then, everything just went downhill. As I grew up through the years, it was a struggle growing up without a dad. It basically came down to finding who I am. All became of like my finding my identity. Growing up, I've always had a desire to help people in a way. Never knew who really put that desire there. It's just something I was just born with. And as I got into high school, that's when things just started going downhill. I ended up hanging out with the wrong crowd, just trying to fit in any way I could. I think around my sophomore year is when I started coming here to Temple Baptist Church. Started hanging out with the youth group. I was never, I was really a church-going family. I grew up in a Catholic family, but never knew who really God was, and never knew that you had to have a relationship with Him. Go to church, and that was it, just one day a week. Never really read my Bible, and so when I started going to this youth group, it was like a whole new thing. It was actually getting into God's Word and actually, studying it, and it started to have an effect on my life. And so I kept, going to youth group and, getting to know the people. And I know one thing that hit me the most was seeing everyone full of joy. I think it's when my first trip with actually I've been going with the youth group for a while, and we went to the Harvest Crusades, and I think the message there really pushed me in a way. I could feel like the Spirit, like that voice in your head just saying, come to me, come to me. Ever since I was going to youth group, I always felt that, and I was always scared. I was either shy or had this thing in my mind where, people were gonna look at me different. I lived with my mom my whole life, and, she was Catholic, and so she was all against that. And I think that day really pushed me to, actually go to God and stuff. And about a couple of days later, I ended up coming into Christ, and, I thought, that everything was just going to change in my life. Because there's a lot of things I've gone through in my life, whether it was in a depression state or feeling abandoned by certain people even in my life, especially my dad, or getting molested when I was 8 years old. I thought all that was just going to go away and stuff, and just like that. So I started going to church. My life did change in many ways. And so I started growing more and stuff, and I think when everyone becomes a Christian, they're seeking, okay, the next step. What's the next step? I want to follow God. I started searching in many ways and stuff. Just going to youth group, and youth group played a big part when I became a Christian. I think the end of my senior year, I think that's when everything really started. I got a job out in Idaho and to work at a summer camp as a staff working with kids, high schools and middle school. And eventually I ended up staying in Idaho, and I think that's when God really puts you to the test, is when you step out of your comfort zone, and He wants to see what you're made of, and how far you can go, and how much faith you can put in Him, and how much trust. And I think like nowadays, a lot of high schoolers who graduate high school, they go out into the real world and expecting it, to be kind of easy and stuff. And in my case, I thought it was gonna be easy. Like, I kind of grew up in the world before I went to church, and so going to Idaho was like more of, it was like a whole test, and I felt like Idaho was really like my calling in life, and just a step towards that direction. And it really, just became down to how my relationship with God was and how strong it could be. Through the first year, it was probably like, one of like the hardest years was, trying to stay strong with God, and God really tested my faith and, stretched it in many ways. And you get to this certain point where it's almost like where you don't really need God anymore. And I know that really took a toll on me. I went to this phase where I was like, okay, I'm doing fine on my own, and things are going pretty great, and eventually things just started going downhill as I kind of started to go through a phase of drifting away from God, but not really going far away. I always knew He was there, and I only called Him when I needed Him, and then I started focusing on my own desires and my own wants, and eventually, that doesn't go far, and during this time, it became more of running away from God in a sense of, like, ever since I moved to Idaho, I found out a lot of who I was compared to when you're at home and you're in a safe place and stuff and you're going to church. And Idaho was really something God used to open up my heart in many ways, showing how broken I was from my past and things that I didn't even know I was still hurting from in many ways, from when my dad left or from when I got molested as a kid, and just all the chaos that went through my life and stuff. And a lot of that I kind of threw on the back burner, growing up, and God really put me in a situation where I had to really, trust and lean on Him. It was a lot to handle, and I was like, okay, I think I can handle this on my own. I don't really need God. Eventually, as the months went by, I came to a point where I just couldn't go no more. Life your whole world just goes upside down and stuff, and realizing, I can't get through all this pain and hurt that I've been carrying. And one day I just kind of broke down and stuff, and like, I need you, God, more than ever. You're the one that's got me far, and I'm not gonna give up now. So, little by little, I started opening up to people and stuff, and giving it all to God and stuff. And I would say to this point, God has given me much faith and trust, I've needed to get this far in my life, and to be self-accountable, and just the things that I've gone through, God has shown me how I can use that in other people's lives. Just being able to connect to them in a certain way and to share my story, and especially where I work at, God has definitely blessed me with that job, and God has really been teaching me, to not give up when there are dark days, and just to keep pressing forward, no matter what you go through in life. And there's gonna be days where you're gonna fail. I mean, no one's perfect. Ever since I came to Idaho, yes, I failed. I failed many times. You just got to keep getting back up. That's just what makes us Christian. We're not perfect. We need a God. I think that's like kind of been the highlight of, my life right now, is we need God in our life. And I've seen what people's lives have become without God. So eventually, you get to, I think every Christian goes to that phase where they're in a spot where they're just still, in still water. And for me, it was to a point where I kind of lost sight of God. He was just kind of in the back, just there. That's a really dangerous place to be, when you're not putting God in the center of your life, and you're not putting Him first, because a lot of your decisions will, affect you in the long run. And when you keep doing that for so long, you get to a point where it's almost, you're starting to forget about God. It becomes like this black hole where, you're doing all this stuff, what you want and stuff, and, you start following, the world, and your mind just gets clouded with that. You're not focused, on the things that are important and stuff, and God just becomes less important. And for me, it put me in a dark place where, I've totally not forgot about God, but He just wasn't in every decision I was doing. He wasn't in my lifestyle. And I got in a really depressing mood. I would go to church some days and just be like God, I can't feel you. Like, I know you have you in my life, but, like, where are you at when I need you? And you just start, drifting away from Him, and you start doing other stuff. And I got in this low point where my life was going so downhill. I lost who I was, and I was like, because, without God in my life, for me, was, who am I? So I felt like for a while, I didn't have God, and I was just going through these mood swings and stuff, and for a while, growing up, I've always had suicidal thoughts, nothing ever serious and stuff, and it was just something more I joked about, but kind of meant it in a way. But I think during this time, it really hit me where I just kind of hit rock bottom, and felt like no one was there. That's when I felt like God wasn't there, because of one night where I started feeling other things in my life, to fill that hole of trying different things. And just one night, I just kind of had it with life. Some things were going on, and I wasn't going to church, and my life was just in an empty point. And I tried committing suicide. It's probably one of the lowest points I've ever been in my life. To this day, I'm not sure what got me to that point, but I remember the last thing before I overdosed was crying out to God. And before everything just went black, it was more of like an awakening call. God saying, don't ever take me for granted. And I think ever since then, I have put God first, and He's definitely been blessing me for the past year. And yeah, it's been hard. I mean, I had my struggles. For the longest time, I've always seemed like, the quiet guy. Didn't really talk, didn't really open up to anyone. And for me to open up so much was hearing other people's story. It's very important to share your story, because you never know who may be going through the same thing. And now I'm working at Chipotle. Definitely God has blessed me there. If it wasn't, for God's grace, I wouldn't have overcome any of the challenges, I've had to overcome and still are trying to overcome. I think the key verse for my life would be 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. Old things have gone, and behold, all things become new. Definitely that would be my favorite. Before who I was and who God was creating for me to be, and who I'm still trying to become, I'm definitely a new person before, I came to Christ, and who I am now. I'm still on this journey and still seeking God and trusting Him. Never give up on God. Keep doing what I'm doing. Stay strong. And don't ever give up. My name is Matthew Herrera, and this is my Testimony Tuesday.